Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone is just here. She's doing the things that she loves to do. I hope you're doing the things that you love to do. It is Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you. The Here We Go is out. Thomas Frank is going to be our new manager. By the time this is uploaded, you might even get the official announcement. Expected to be at 11 a.m. this morning. Exciting times, guys. Exciting times. Clean slate, new page, new chapter, and what will come? What will we make of this opportunity to work with a coach? Who's going to benefit? Who's going to suffer? Who's going to be surplus to requirements? Who's going to come in? All things to chew over for the next, well, couple of months, I guess. But before we get into today's version of that, guys, please do me a favour, smash the like button for me if you enjoy the videos. I'm changing it up a little bit today. Rather than doing the tripod sort of news piece, I'm getting back to the walkies because, you know, she's a sufferer of the stagnant approach, as am I. As am I. Weight is piling on. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. By the way, if you enjoy these content pieces, either the live streams or the uploads, then you might find them more enjoyable if you are into podcasts, Spotify, etc. These are all uploaded to there. The link is in the description and it will be pinned into the comments. So if that's the way you like to consume your content, then you can find us over there. Please do. Please go and smash a follow over there. Right, guys, what are we doing? So Thomas Frank is in. He's in, allegedly. As the Here We Go is out. £10 million in compensation, £5 million payoff to the ex-gaffer Ange Postecoglou. And now that we know what we're doing, what we're working with here, we can speculate on what were parts of the agreement. And according to reports last night, it was all agreed, not just on the package, the terms, etc., but also agreement on the sorts of players, the transfer budget, the sorts of players we're going to target, how much to spend on them, who can go out the door. We haven't got much details in that regard. However, this morning we do have some names to sort of tick off the list for you that are either re-emerging or sort of somewhat new names in the Tottenham zeitgeist. Now, I didn't mention João Pedro on the previous upload because, well, I don't think the news had broken. Yesterday I only did one show. Apologies about last night's 9 o'clock fan show rescheduling. That's tonight. João Pedro. Look, what do you think about João Pedro? Let me ask you. 10 goals last season, 6 assists. He's an out-and-out striker, but can also play off the left. He's fast, Brazilian, youngster, fits the profile, fits the model. And I really like him, really like him. I think he's a top player. But Brighton will charge a fortune, valued at 50 million according to Transfer Market. You know, I think that Brighton are the sort of team that don't need to sell. Come on, Bucks, I'll throw the ball for you. So if they do, I mean, they're always willing to sell, but they always usually get top draw money, don't they? Top money. And it's one of those names where, I don't know, does he wow you to the same degree as the next name we're going to talk about in Semenyo? I don't think he does. A different sort of player, same sort of area, but different sort of player. And you know, for me, look, I do like João Pedro. Would I be against it? Absolutely not. Do I think he's better than what we have? Well, he's entirely different to Solanke. I know a lot of you guys think that Solanke is overrated. I think he's underrated in the Tottenham fan base. I think he massively goes under the radar for his work rate. I've said it 1,000 times. I believe that maybe 40-50% of Brennan Johnson's goal output, well, that's recognised in the input of Dominic Solanke drawing players out. Now, that was the role that he was asked to play at Tottenham under Ange Postecoglou. Under Frank, he's going to be asked to play a far more traditional centre-forward role. And consequently, I think you'll see, well, hopefully, a version of him that gets back to the sorts of levels of personal output that we saw under the previous year at Bournemouth. Now, I don't know if the idea to bring in a João Pedro is predicated on the idea that someone has to leave. I was having this conversation with Johnny yesterday on the live stream. I feel like everyone's talking about wingers at Tottenham, but we have like dozens of them. Not dozens of them, but we have probably 8 or 9. Let's go through the list. Solomon, a player that a lot of Tottenham fans want to see back and to be given their chance. And they sort of position their idea around the output that he got in the Championship. And they make the argument, I don't agree with it, that because he's done it at that level, it's going to transition, and the only reason there's a question mark is because of his injuries. I think that's running before you can walk. I think the proof will be in the pudding. You have to kind of make a judgment call, because even if you wait and see what he does in pre-season, I'm not sure the standard of football in pre-season should really give you too much in the way of an insight as to whether or not, you know, these players are worth the crack. It's a difficult one, because how else do you gauge? But ultimately, you know, pre-season is often about just getting the tactics more familiar in semi-competitive football, and also to get your fitness levels up. And so, despite the fact that Tottenham are playing some heavyweight teams in our pre-season, I think we've got a game against Newcastle, a game against Munich, a game against Arsenal. I think that there's, and of course we've got the Super Cup as well. You know, I'll be surprised if, you know, the sort of levels of football on display are top draw. And so, if you're only going to take, if you work with my logic here, if you're only going to take what you see in those pre-season games with a pinch of salt, then at what point do you run the rule over whether you want Man or Solomon? And if you do want Man or Solomon, and you are also a fan who wants Tottenham to sign someone like a Semenyo, someone like a Tyler Dibbling, someone like a Bryan Mbeumo, someone like an Eze, someone who's going to occupy one of those wing spots, and you want Solomon, then you're going to have to find movement in the squad elsewhere. And let's talk about the other names, right? So you have Brennan Johnson, who scored a goal last night for Wales in a brilliant game against Belgium. Johnson again, ole, ole. You have Decky, who can play as a hybrid role between the 10 and the right wing. You have Maddison, who at times, I know he doesn't do it for Tottenham, but at times has played off the left. You have Richalison, who can play off the left, and he's usually played off the left, more so than he's played up in the 9 role. You have Sonny, who, according to reports today, the way that this article was structured by Graham Bailey in the football room, the TBR, the boot room, he's saying that part of the, I think I'm inferring this correctly, that part of the conditions around Thomas Frank coming was that he wanted to work with Sonny, because the article was structured in an argument that suggested that Tottenham's owners might go above Thomas Frank's head and sell Sonny to Saudi anyway. Which, by the way, I'm okay with. I made my pitch on that. I'd absolutely be devastated from sadness to see him go, because I feel like he's part of my life. He's part of my biggest passion and hobby for the last 10 years. But I also think that at some point you have to say goodbye. If you love them, let them go. And in fact, you've got to go get your ball. You lost your ball down here. And I just feel like there is a need to be able to, to move players on, because otherwise you end up sometimes sort of, I don't know, spoiling the recipe a little bit by leaving something in there too long. And I don't want his legacy to be in any way tarnished or to be remembered in any other form than the legend that he has been for the Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And what a perfect way to say goodbye. So you've got Sonny, you've got Richarlison, you've got Solomon, you've got Brennan Johnson, you've got Decky, you have Micky Moore, who most people last season were begging for him to get more minutes. Now when I ask people, how do you squeeze all these players in, they're saying that Micky Moore should get a loan to a championship level team. Square that circle. You've got Jamie Donnelly, that's 7. You've got Yang, Huaktu and spit on that Yang, that's 8. You know, we have, I'm sure there's 1 or 2 others as well who I'm overlooking. Let me know in the comments. But we've got about 9 wingers already, and now you want to throw in 1 of, or some people say 2 of. Some people want Eze and Mbeumo and a Semenyo, whatever, right? So that means you've got 11 wingers for a guy that, when he pivots to a back 3, sometimes he goes like 3-5-2 and plays 2 men up front in like Mbeumo and Vissa, for example. So, like, how do you squeeze them all in? Some of them have got to go. Richarlison apparently doesn't want to go. As I said before, he's like the little brother, the cock block, who when your parents are out and you get your girlfriend coming round and you're asking your little brother to piss off out the room for an hour or out the house for a couple of hours, go skateboarding, mate, I've got a chance here. And he's like, nope, I'm not going. And I'm going to tell daddy what you're doing. We've all been there. So if he's not leaving, and then people also want Solomon to come back to fight for his place, and he said he wants to come back and fight for his place, where's the space in the squad? Especially if there's rumours are true that Tottenham, because of banking covenants, of which no one's ever familiar with, right? Everyone works off of, either the rumours that are in the press or what we see in the accounts. But in the accounts, there's not the covenants that may be are restrictive of the ability to spend because of cash flow, right? No one really ever talks about covenants because they're not things that are visible to the average fan. But essentially, covenants are conditions in the bank loans that protect the lender, i.e. the banks, from problems in the business by saying, well, look, if your cash flow drops to this, you can't spend any more than that, or, you have a maximum amount of percentage of this or that you can do with this and that. Well, it's just basically conditions in the contract. And we don't know the details of that. But Simon Jordan always reflects and says from a place of knowledge that he obviously knows from Daniel Levy that Tottenham are working within covenants that we're not, like you and I are not going to be aware of. So if there's those conditions that do actually kind of alter the ability to spend because of the cash flow restrictions that we're currently going through, then you're going to have to raise the money from somewhere. So where do you raise it? If you've got Richalison that doesn't want to go, if you have Solomon that says he wants to come back and fight for his place, and you've got a fan base that are split down the middle on whether to sell him anyway, I personally say, you sell Solomon for 20 million quid if you can. If you can. Leeds have got an owner who says we're going to spend every penny that we possibly can this summer. Real ambition to make sure that they stay up. And Solomon's the top of their wish list. Can we go and get every ounce of juice from that squeeze that's possible? Because as I say that, if people that are saying bring Solomon back, if they're really saying it on the basis of they're not sure, sort of like the same argument around Ange Postecoglou, when it was like give him 10 games and see. That's not a conviction call for me. And so, I'm not going to get back into the Ange Postecoglou conversation, but in a nutshell, with Solomon, if you're also saying, well, at least bring him back for the summer and let him go, let's see what he does in pre-season, I don't think you can really gauge too much from pre-season around whether someone is of the level, because you don't know what level of competitiveness those games are being played at. Either way, there's problems with regards making all these sort of links work, right? Even if you just want an Eze, or if you want, as I say, the second name on the list, so João Pedro to finish off. I like João Pedro, I really do. But he doesn't get my juices flowing to the same degree and for the same level of price and outlay that we're going to have to spend on him. Plus, he's Brazilian, so more problems with squeezing that into the Champions League squad because of the foreign quota. I think we're already basically maxed out on that. Or we have one more space, and maybe you're either going to have to sell some players that are non-homegrown or non-European or non-UK, or you're going to have to leave players out that maybe have injuries that are not going to be resolved in time for the start of the initial campaign. Maybe like a Radu Dragusin or a Decky, for example. Anyway, but Semenyo is the next name on the books, right? So this guy is a ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Absolutely love him. If you tell me about pecking order, Mbeumo, because Semenyo technically is a left winger with a right foot, but let me tell you something, this guy can play across the front three. He's incredible off the right. He's two-footed. His ability to shoot the ball from outside the box or from the edge of the box and find the corner. I love to see a striker who not only just puts his foot through it, but can pick his spot and get it there with a high degree of accuracy, a high degree of probability, and spicy to the point where you're not placing it, you're slamming it, but you're slamming it with accuracy. Sort of like a golfer that can drive the ball 350 yards with just that perfect kind of little bit of draw. Sometimes when you really put your boot through it, put your swing into it, then you're going to give up a bit of accuracy. I don't think Semenyo has that issue with his shooting. Really, really, really fine driver of the ball. Good techers on that regard. He's fast. He's strong in the carry. Think Decky-esque, the way he can sort of run and shot and body people with his shoulder out, his elbow out. Nothing to dislike about Semenyo. I think he's a really good player. Does play for Ghana, so you have to consider the African Cup of Nations impact. 50 million quid is the asking price. 40 million according to Transfer Market. Reports are saying 50 from Bournemouth. Are Bournemouth going to be willing to let go, or are they going to hold on for dear life because they've already lost Huijsen? There's rumours that Patrick Kluivert might be leaving as well. By the way, is Patrick Kluivert a player that you guys like? I think he's really, really nice, but I know what will happen. The reaction to signing someone like him will be similar to what it was when we signed Dominic Solanke. And I think that there's just a little bit of snobbery with regards sometimes buying players from these clubs, that you have to sort of take a step back and think about the context in which and how they can help and operate within the system in which we're working into and walking into. And with Thomas Frank, well, there's going to be loads of different systems, loads of different scenarios, isn't there? There's going to be back threes at times. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time for tacticians, for those in the Tottenham fan base who are, into figuring out the various angles of how we set up against a certain team. Because before, under our previous guy, it was, well, we know how we're going to set up. It doesn't matter that this team are better with their width and this team goes more narrow. We're going to play the same way. Under Thomas Frank, I think as time moves on and the players become more comfortable with the various different sort of disciplines of his strategy and structure, then I think you're going to see far more variety, far more complexity to our system. And I think those things should also bide him some time because, as I say, you're not just learning one model of football with Thomas Frank. You're going to be learning several. And for a lot of these young players that have come in where Tottenham is their second club or their first club, and they've really only kind of had a few years of education at the top end of the game, there might be a steep learning curve here for some of these players to be able to pivot to things that they're not used to. For other players like Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie, they're going back to what their kind of home field advantage, right? Wing back systems when necessary, a little bit more discipline, a little bit more sort of dynamic and fluid sort of relationships with the fullback system or the wing-back system. And even players like Luka Vuskovic, who got his debut for his national team last night, where there were question marks with Tottenham fans around, are these guys going to be able to fit into the Ange Postecoglou highline system because of their lack of pace? Well, what's going to be nice here is that we're going to have like probably on average a 10-yard deeper line. And we're going to, rely less on pace. I'll be interested to know whether Micky van der Ven's skill set and prominence will become a victim of that. Is he as good at the discipline of defending as he is at the discipline of, getting out of jail free and sort of being that sort of wonder kind that gets you when someone does break on you, and then he can use his pace to get us out of trouble. In a Brentford system, is that going to happen as often? A Thomas Frank system, rather? Not sure. And so keep an eye on whether Micky van der Ven continues his progression. I think that guy is just super talented, super confident. I think he can do it all. I think he's just been used in a system that relies on his God-given talents. And now we're going to see whether he can mould himself into an all-round defender that is better in the air and that, that can be a part of the slow, progressive build-up play that Brentford like to do. It's going to be fascinating to see how these various talents develop. Just for what it's worth, guys, so we talk about Semenyo. He's a link, right, and I really love him. So I'd actually place him above Mbeumo, to be entirely honest. For me, Bryan Mbeumo is sort of more here now, ready now, tried and tested. He knows the Premier League. We all know what we can expect from him, and I'd love to see him in. Don't get me wrong. This would be, of the choice, Semenyo or Mbeumo. It's irrelevant to me. I'd be happy with either of them to play off the right. Semenyo can play off the left as well. Mbeumo can play as a striker when necessary. So everyone's got their sort of versatility. But for me, that is, it doesn't bother me, but I think Mbeumo's going to United. If Tottenham can get Semenyo, ratatata. Eze, the deal is still being spoken about, that Tottenham are going to break and have to go, according to, I think it was caught offside this morning, or was it TBR? I'm not sure. Either way, they're talking about the thing that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that if the buyout clause is 68 million, but it's all in one lump sum, how do you go about doing that in a way that makes it happy without you having to destroy your liquidity? Well, maybe you offer more money, like 72 million or something like that, but you do it where you're structuring the payments. Now, the added variable into that conversation, of course, Daniel Levy's not going to be someone that wants or ever wants to pay more. And other reports are saying he has no intention of paying that release fee. But, at some point you have to step up, be brave. And he was on the list of players that apparently have been agreed between Frank and the club, that Thomas Frank isn't going to be the only decision maker around the transfer strategy, but that he's requested that he's at least very much a part of it. And that if he wasn't a part of it, if it was all down to Paratici and Johan Lang, then he wasn't on board the transfer, or wasn't on board the job. But that's been sort of agreed upon, that he's part of the conversations, and they've spoken about the names in which they're trying to get right now, and he's agreed that those targets are fine. Be interesting to see what happens with Sonny though, because the way the story was written this morning, it read like that that Thomas Frank wants to keep him, and maybe the club want to sell him because of those cash covenant issues. Tyler Dibbling, another name, 55 million quid. Apparently Tottenham have no interest in paying 55 million quid, 40 million quid, and they would entertain something, but I'm not sure that he's anything above maybe 6th or 7th on my list. If he comes in, I'll get excited because he's a real prospect, but I think we're past the point of prospects, aren't we, really, at this stage? What else have I got for you? So done João Pedro, done Semenyo, done Mbeumo. Eze, sorry, yeah. So what the interesting variable with Eze is Crystal Palace's predicament with regards to the Europa League. They're doing everything they can to try to get themselves into the right shape structurally. And I feel really sorry for them, to be entirely honest, because the fans have done nothing wrong. The club have done nothing wrong. In reality, it's just a kind of clerical admin issue that should be able to be sorted out. I think John Textor, the guy who owns Botafogo, and he also owns, I think it's Lyon, and a team in Belgium whose name escapes me right now. He said he's willing to sort of step down as a director of the club in order to make to give himself the space to be able to get into the Europa League, and they're not even sure if that's going to be enough. So if they don't get in, then they won't get the cash. Now, what's even more fascinating on this story is Nottingham Forest, who were the victims of a lot of a poor end to the season and last day sort of dramas. They were a victim because of Aston Villa's issues. What happened with them? So Forest ended up qualifying for the Conference League, and apparently Nottingham Forest have written a letter to UEFA saying that if you're considering letting them back in the back door via a clerical readjustment, then that's outrageous. And that they're putting pressure on UEFA to not allow them. And obviously Crystal Palace are doing everything they can to try and allow them. So there's potential civil war going on between those two clubs in the Premier League, and those relationships are more important than you realise, because I've spoken for ages about the idea of West Ham's new potential owner, Trzynski and the Gold family selling up to Trip Smith so that he can have majority over Sullivan. And Trip Smith is in bed with Blueco, who own Chelsea, with Todd Bowley, and he's in bed with David Blitzer, who is a part owner of Crystal Palace. And I was saying, well, remember that you've already got 5 dissidents from the Europa League, from the Premier League's sort of voting in favour of tightening around the rules. Well, one of the clubs that's already part of that 5 are Nottingham Forest. And if they were hoping for potential... Where's your ball? If they were hoping for potential more, I don't know, cartel members, if you like, in the form of a potential Trip Smith owned version of West Ham, and or Crystal Palace, who's in bed with Trip Smith, and as I say, all this incestuous ownership behaviour, then Nottingham Forest going against Crystal Palace, does that mean that maybe the cartel, the cabal, is going to have its own little civil war? Fascinating stuff. Time will tell. Time will tell. Either way, on a presumption that Crystal Palace won't be allowed to play in the Europa League, then does that lack of revenue change Crystal Palace's stance on someone like Eberechi Eze and the need to get the £68 million up front? Does it strengthen it? In as much as, well, we're not getting the revenue, we don't have the draw to attract good players, therefore we need to keep our best players to go again next year? Or does it weaken it in as much as we don't have the revenue we're going to get from there, therefore we need revenue in other areas to do what else we had intended to do, like replacing Gahey, for example? And, ipso facto, vis-a-vis, does that give a negotiating tactic edge to whoever's coming in for Eze? It's fascinating, guys. It's absolutely fascinating. Let me know your thoughts on it. Last story for you guys is Lewis Potter, the Brentford left-back / winger that can play across the front 3. Look, really interesting player. For what it's worth, I looked at his stats earlier. Just if you were to compare him to a left back like Udogie and Jed Spence, for example, he has 78 crosses last season, versus, I think it was like 25 and 19 for the other two. In terms of duels, physical duels, defensive duels, Lewis Potter had twice as many as the other two, and he won about 60% of them. This guy is very disciplined, he's very balanced, he's good at defensively, but when when he gets on the ball, he can drive forward and he can be a real threat. He's English, he's homegrown, and he's a player that no one's talking about at Brentford, but the rumours are out that Tottenham are going to, when Thomas Frank gets his feet under the table, that one of the first players they're going to go back to Brentford to see if they can bring over isn't Mbeumo anymore. That seems like that job is done. They're going to move towards maybe Lewis Potter instead. So I'm not sure what you think about that one. I mean, I'm okay with it. Depends on the price, depends on the cost. I think £25 million is the asking price. And as I say, if money's tight right now, I don't think it should be. But then I'm not familiar with the banking covenant conditions. But if it is tight, then every penny counts. And players like Manor Solomon, we have to make a decision on those, not us, but like I want to know what your thoughts are, because is that 20 million quid that can go towards what we really want to do? Do we already have too many wingers? How many of the others would you sell? Would you loan out? Are you okay selling Richie? Are you okay selling Sonny? Are you okay loaning out Mikey Moore for a loan fee? What about Jamie Donnelly? You know, I would like to see Jamie Donnelly back. I want to see what he's capable of. But again, I don't know what you can gauge from pre-season. Let me know your thoughts. Do you take pre-season form as a relevant sort of consideration, relevant variable? I think you can judge their fitness and maybe their sharpness and what they've been doing in the off-season, whether they're sluggish or out of shape. But in terms of, you know, if Jamie Donnelly was to score a worldie against Arsenal, should that be a relevant factor in deciding whether to keep him or to put him into the Championship or to let him go back to Leyton Orient? Don't know. Time will tell, guys. I'll be doing a live stream later on when the Thomas Frank news is completely done by the Tottenham Hotspur statement. But it might already be there by the time this gets up. But I'll see you later on either way. 9 o'clock for sure for the fan show. Take care, guys. Bye.